Let's bring in Harris campaign spokesperson now, Ian Sams. Ian, good to have you here. The vice president heading to a couple areas of Pennsylvania that Trump won in 2020. So what in the campaign math makes you think that this is the best strategy right now to spend time in Trump country?
Well, thanks for having me. And you think about what the vice president's doing today. She's stumping across these two counties that Donald Trump won in 2020 to expand her appeal and to grow her support in these areas. I mean, you're talking about a state, Pennsylvania, that was decided in 2020 by around 80,000 votes. These are slim margins in the battleground states. We're a divided country, but the vice president's focused on trying to grow her coalition. You've seen recently more than 200 alums of the Bush, McCain, and Romney campaigns coming out to support her. Vice President Dick Cheney, his daughter, Congresswoman Liz Cheney, just yesterday, the former Bush Attorney General, Alberto Gonzales, endorsing her candidacy. She's making real gains among Republicans, and I think it's because people see that she's offering a positive vision for the country and rejecting the chaos and division of Donald Trump. And so when you go in to communities like this in Lucerne and Cambria County, Pennsylvania, where the margins really matter, she's speaking to voters to try to get her message out that we can actually turn the page on the Donald Trump era and come together and unite as a country. We have a new ad out this morning featuring the moment in the debate where the vice president says, when I was a prosecutor, I never asked a victim whether they were a Republican or a Democrat. I just asked them, are you okay? And that's the type of ethos we need from the president, who's going to be looking out for all Americans. And so this is the kind of message that she's taking to these redder areas where Donald Trump may have won to help grow her support and hopefully put her over the edge in these battleground states.
Ian, Trump has been leaning into that baseless conspiracy theory about migrants eating pets. What's your message to voters who, even though they're seeing this, are still undecided?
Well, look, I think that the message to them is like, is Donald Trump even talking about anything you care about? I mean, what in the world is this eating dogs and cats stuff? It's a right-wing conspiracy theory. There's NBC reporting this morning talking about how neo-Nazis are championing the fact that he brought this to the debate stage. I mean, he is speaking to a scary far-right fringe right now and bringing those issues to the debate stage instead of issues that people actually care about. In the first 5 minutes, Vice President Harris talked about her plan to expand small businesses and give new small business owners a $50,000 tax deduction to help them afford to start a business. She talked about her plans to take on grocery pricing and housing pricing and bring those down for the American people. She talked about reproductive freedom and how she wants to protect it and sign a law that codifies Roe v. Wade. Those are the things that voters actually care about. And Donald Trump is ranting about conspiracy theories that don't make any sense and that people are actually laughing at when he says them. And so there's a fundamental difference in this election between one candidate who's talking about issues that actually matter to the American people and another candidate who's ranting and raving like a lunatic.
When you talk about trying to expand who she's reaching, we have heard from some undecided voters that we've talked to that even after the debate, they still don't know enough about the vice president's plans for the future and how her vision is different from President Biden's. What do you say to that?
Well, I say this is a big part of what we're doing over the next 50 days. I mean, she was able to do it in the debate to talk about her own proposals and what her own priorities would be as president. She said, you know, I'm not President Biden and I'm certainly not Donald Trump. And she's offering her own set of proposals and vision for the country. And what the next 50 some odd days will do is allow her to get out on the campaign trail and share those priorities directly with the American people. And so part of what you do in a campaign is you take your message out there to the voters. Yeah. And so what she's going to be doing is continuing to explain how she wants to bring down those prices, how she wants to create new small businesses in this country, the things that are her real economic priorities that may be a little bit different than what President Biden has proposed and emphasized, but speaks to what she will do as president with her priorities.
Can you point to those specific differences on those key issues?
Well, for example, just a couple weeks ago in her plan to support small businesses, she talked about the investment climate that we need in order to help entrepreneurs start small businesses and grow. President Biden had proposed raising the capital gains, long-term capital gains rate on the top tax bracket all the way up to about 40%. She thought that was too high, so she suggested a lower rate of 28% as the number for that, because it can help incentivize more investment in entrepreneurs and startups in America. And that's because she really believes in sparking growth among small businesses in this country. And so there are distinctions certainly on policy, but I think the other thing that people often should remember, they're different people. When you're campaigning out there, people want to see someone who reflects their values, someone who they can relate to. And when the vice president talks about her history as a prosecutor, for example, and who she was fighting to protect and who she was defending, taking on the big banks to get $20 billion for homeowners who got screwed during the financial crisis, taking on gangs who were smuggling people and drugs across the border. That is her history and record that she brings to her values that she would prioritize on policy as president. That's distinct and different from President Biden, and it's certainly distinct and different from Donald Trump.
Ian Sams, great to have you here.